like Kim or myself to use your name or where from or what you do in that question, just note that down in your little question there. So I'll just pass it over to Kim to introduce herself really quickly, and then we can move into the start of our session.
Thanks, Chris. Kia ora koutou. Always lovely to be here with the DECA whānau. I'm Kim Conley-Stone, big friend of DECA, also good friends with IT professionals and the New Zealand Telecommunications Forum as well, the TCF. Yes, I'm just here to help out with the questions and the answers and the flow. Sorry I can't see you all, but seeing all the familiar names coming in on the attendees. So lovely to know you're all there. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Kim. Thank you for that. And I think probably in the means of time, I'm going to pass over to Adrienne and Colin from DIA to move into their part of the presentation. Kia ora, Adrienne. Kia ora, Colin.
Kia ora, Chris, and kia ora, Kim as well. And a tangata whenua e mihi ana o tu kia koutou, and a tahongu mā ko tēnei te mihi kia koutou katoa, e mahi ana o ki te taritai whenua, ko kai whakahaere matua aho, ko Colin Holden toka wingawa, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Well, kia ora everyone. My name's Colin Holden and I'm a General Manager in the Digital Public Services area of Te Taritai Whenua. So our role is to support the Government Chief Digital Officer to lead the digital transformation of New Zealand's public service. It's a pleasure to join you today, and a big thanks to Vic and Chris and the DECA team for creating this opportunity for us. So we're here today to talk about the new digital strategy for Aotearoa and what this might mean for the kaupapa we all share a strong interest in, digital inclusion. So we thought we'd start by sharing a few key points first and then look forward to a bit more of an interactive discussion with you afterward. What I'd like to do is to set the scene by giving an overview of the strategy and some of the big opportunities and challenges that we see ahead. So the Minister for the Digital Economy and Communications, the Hon. Dr. David Clark, launched the strategy on the 14th of September this year, so it's still very new. Its overarching vision is that Aotearoa New Zealand's people, communities, economy and environment flourish and prosper in the digital era. Digital technologies have been increasingly diffusing across economies and societies for decades now. But New Zealand, along with many other countries across the world, saw a step change in adoption and use of digital technologies as the result of the COVID-19 pandemic. In the world we now live in, getting digital policies right is even more important. The strategy is the start of a journey to further uplift New Zealand's digital capabilities and to support everyone to make the most of digital technologies. It's not an end in itself, rather it sets the ambition for work over the next decade. The strategy brings stronger coherence to the work already underway across government. In this way, it brings significant value as a focal point to understand how digital transformation is progressing and what future actions and investments are required. The strategy aspires to integrate Te Ao Māori views on data as a key part of our digital and data system. Ultimately, work under the strategy should make New Zealand more resilient, help create higher value jobs, enable globally successful businesses that are sustainable, and help generate exports with lower emissions footprints. The strategy gives us a national approach to New Zealand's ongoing digital transformation. It's framed around 3 pillars that provide an enduring way to organise policy initiatives and thinking across government. The first pillar is mahi tika, or trust. In a nutshell, this is about people, communities and organisations feeling comfortable and confident when they are using digital and data-driven technologies. If there's not trust in digital systems, then there won't be uptake and use of these technologies. The second pillar is mahi tahi, or inclusion. Everyone should feel empowered to equitably participate in an increasingly digital society. And this has a lot to do with having the tools, the skills, the access, and the confidence to engage. It's only through inclusion that the real benefits of digital technologies will be unleashed. The third pillar of the strategy is mahi ake, or growth. Digital technologies can help New Zealand become a more prosperous and productive economy through the value of our domestic tech sector and through adoption of digital technologies right across the economy. These three pillars reinforce one another, and while policies may move at different speeds, over time we need to keep these issues on an equal footing. Given the topic of this webinar, I thought we should take a closer look at the mahi tahi inclusion pillar. COVID has shown that digital exclusion affects a range of groups in New Zealand, and its effects can be profound. We've been privy to some heartbreaking stories of those who feel excluded from society due to the increasing shift online. It's important that all New Zealanders have the tools, the skills, and the confidence to participate online if they want to, and that is why digital inclusion is a key pillar of the strategy. The research that we've done in DIA shows that up to 20% of New Zealanders can't engage digitally, and that our more vulnerable communities are at higher risk of digital exclusion. Digital exclusion is intrinsically tied to poverty, and it's driven by a complex and multifaceted set of problems. Not everyone can access or afford decent internet or adequate devices. And even if they could access the technology, not everyone has the core digital skills needed to engage safely and successfully online. New Zealanders wish to be able to access help and services in ways that suit them, and some people will only trust help from people that look and sound like them. An essential service like health or education and commerce move more and more online. Digital inclusion is becoming essential to participation in modern New Zealand society and the economy. So how do we realise the potential of the strategy? The strategy comes with an action plan, which will be refreshed annually to help keep up with changing technologies and shifting priorities. The first edition of the action plan was launched alongside the strategy and contains 11 flagship initiatives and a range of other activities that will help advance the strategy's goals. I've listed the flagships here, and I'm not going to go through all of them in detail, but you can see they include a mix of important initiatives already underway and also some new initiatives that we managed to get funded through the latest budget. Some examples of those are the $60 million the government is investing in rural connectivity, and $20 million that it's investing in a digital technologies industry transformation plan. Collectively, these initiatives contribute to advancing all three of the strategy's pillars: trust, inclusion, and growth. I'd also note that they come from a range of government agencies and target a variety of policy areas. For instance, a Trailblazer grant is broadening innovation support to include non-R&D innovation, while the Christchurch Core is tackling issues of terrorist and violent extremist content online with international partners. This variety reflects that digital transformation cuts across the whole economy and society, and many parts of government are working to help New Zealand make the most of digital opportunities. During the consultation phase for the strategy, stakeholders gave a clear message that we need to be ambitious. Our Minister took that to heart, and the strategy contains a series of success measures against which progress will be gauged. The measures map to the pillars of trust, inclusion, and growth, and they include quite aspirational targets, including that high-speed internet is available to all New Zealanders, and that digital and ICT exports are on track to becoming New Zealand's leading export earner. We're glad to have these stretch objectives, but nested within them is another stretch objective, that of developing better data on our digital progress as a country. Compared to our OECD peers, we do have gaps in our knowledge where we don't collect information and therefore don't have the insights into New Zealand's digital transformation progress. Agencies are working hard on this, and we extend a friendly hand to those of you out there who might be able to help us as well. Statistics New Zealand is coordinating with agencies across government to develop a first progress report in 2023, and it's likely we'll be using a suite of indicators to show how we're tracking on each measure of success. There's strong motivation across government to reach the ambitions of the strategy. It will be a living document, that looks out to 2032, but recognises that it needs to evolve with technology and the issues that arise. There will be regular check-ins with stakeholders that will inform the action plan refreshes and policy directions. The strategy has also delivered new momentum within government for a more coordinated approach through a new interdepartmental digital executive board that is tasked with supporting departments to advance priority work and cross-agency initiatives. You can find the full detail of the strategy and action plan at the website digital.gov.nz. There are multiple formats aimed at promoting accessibility, so you can find audio versions, sign versions, braille versions, amongst others. That's all I have today in terms of the presentation, so thanks for your attention, and we'll now look forward to having a bit of a conversation with you and hearing your questions. Nō reira, mihi ana atu kia koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
Well, kia ora, Colin. Thank you so much for giving us that intro to the strategy. What Chris and I are going to do now, we're going to just start off with just a couple of quite general questions to get the ball rolling. We'll have a little bit of a chat with Adrienne and Colin. And what we're doing is we're keeping an eye on your questions in the Q&A function, and we're making a list of questions that we'll start asking on your behalf after that. So the first question, Adrienne and Colin, is that the thing about the strategy is that, you know, it sets some directions, doesn't it? And it gives us some goals to work towards, but there's still a lot of work to be done. And particularly in the digital equity area, where one of the key, I guess, flagship initiatives is to actually develop a digital inclusion action plan. So it's almost like a lot of the detail on that is still to come. So a question for you is, how can we all help with that? Because we have got, you know, lots of people on this call and lots of people in the DECA community who know lots about what's happening and what needs to happen, and could kind of bring that voice of lived experience to the government conversations. Yeah, so how can we help?
Perhaps I'll kick off, and then I'm sure Adrienne will have some thoughts as well. So look, thanks, Kim. That's a really good question. I suppose we see the digital strategy for Aotearoa as a bit of a call to action. It's a way of giving government some focus in the work that it's doing around the digital space. And we were thrilled that the Minister agreed to have inclusion as one of the core pillars of the strategy. So that then provides some signals, not just to those of us that work directly in the digital space, but also right across government, that digital inclusion is something that we should be thinking about collectively as government. But we do know that government can't address digital inclusion challenges by itself, and that we need to partner with people outside of government, whether that be on the industry side or the community side, to design initiatives that work for the communities that we're trying to help. And I think that's where DECA and the people on this call can help us most. So as we begin to design initiatives, we need to make sure that we're connecting with communities in ways that work for them. And we sit in Wellington. We know we don't understand communities in the way that you understand communities. So we'd be really keen to partner with you to learn from the experience that you have, and to hopefully involve you in the delivery of programs as they come on board. But Adrienne, you'll have some thoughts too.
Well, kia ora, Colin, and e mihi ana atu kia korua ko Chris Raua, ko korua ko Kim. Me e te whānau DECA, e mihi ana atu kia koutou katoa. Huria hou ngā te awa, te Aotearoa me ngai tūhoi. E mahi anō ki te tari taiwhenua, ko kaira taki a hou, ko Adrienne Moor tōko ingoa. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā rā tātou katoa. Just thought I'd introduce myself first before I jump right in with my whakaaro, Colin. I'm Adrienne Moor, for those of you who don't know me. I'm the program lead for digital inclusion here in the Department of Internal Affairs, Te Tari Taiwhenua. And it's really my honour to work alongside other agencies and organisations outside of government, both advocates and champions for digital inclusion and digital equity, but also critical enablers, for example, in industry, really to try and shift the dial in terms of supporting whānau across Aotearoa in this really complex problem. As Colin mentioned, digital exclusion, as we all know, is driven by a set of really, really complicated, multifaceted problems. And that's sort of part of the challenge that we find ourselves in now in terms of firming up the options of where we get started. So there is significant optionality in terms of where we might start first. I fully tautoko and awhi what Colin said around the opportunity for working with DECA around more, sort of community-led and community-enabled approaches, because we have heard very clearly that, they are only going to work or only going to achieve the reach and impact that's needed through working with faces that are trusted, through working with people that are trusted. So I guess, in that context, our question back to the DECA whānau is, where could we start, given the complexity of where the issues are, of what the issues are, and, sort of the extent of where exclusion is and the extent of impact that it has.
Kia ora, Adrienne. Just for everyone, I want to apologise. There's a really loud car chase and protest happening outside the office I'm in. I don't know what's going on out there, but the sounds might come on when I'm chatting. Hey, thanks,
the farmers
Adrienne.
have come to town, Kim.
Oh,
it's the
wow.
farmers.
Okay, I'm a farmer too. It's all right. But for a little follow-up question. So I think one of the, just, it's great to know that the offer there is to help with some of the design work. And I think, we've got a lot of expertise that can do that. And I think we can also help frame up a little more on the option side when it comes to government making those choices. So I just want to make a little shout out to the DECA Affordable Connectivity Constellation. That group's been doing a lot of work lately to kind of really frame up what we know about what the current market is providing, and has started to develop some personas in terms of, folks who are really struggling to connect to the internet and from affordability reasons. So we'll have that mahi with you soon. And I guess that could be sort of one of our first contributions to this next phase as part of the action planning. But I guess, Adrienne, Colin, as your work progresses and there's those opportunities for us to offer input or feedback, let the DECA crew know, and then we can get that out to the broader community.
No, thanks, Kim. And just to pick up on that, that's extremely valuable information for us because, like everyone will understand, money is tight in government at the moment, and we have to work really hard to secure funding for digital inclusion, which has to sit alongside a whole range of other priorities that ministers are juggling. And having an evidence base to draw on as we build our case for further investment in this area is absolutely critical. If we can go to ministers, go to Treasury with a really good evidenced case for investment, that will give us a much better chance of success. So, all power to your hand as you help us build that evidence base.
Well, hopefully Hannah and Craig, our leaders of the Affordable Connectivity Constellation, are on the line because they've been doing amazing work with all the helpers in that group. Chris, I'll hand over to you for the next question.
Thanks. Yeah, I see Hannah in there in the chat there, putting some questions in. I'll just take you back to the strategy and action plan. I think one of the things that people will be asking themselves is there's some things in there that they knew about. There's some things that are new to them. I guess in terms of some of the work I do, things like the affordable connectivity and devices are a big talking point in the DECA constellations that I'm involved in. How do you see some of or can you give a bit more information on some of those items in the action plan that you could talk about a bit further?
Do you want to have a go, Adrienne?
Yeah, really, really happy to do that without sort of ticking off a laundry list of things that are, both available now but also underway. But what I will say is that yes, some actions are included in the action plan that will help with making progress against those measures that Colin talked about in his presentation. But it's important to note that that's not going to fully achieve the measures of the strategy. And so it is an iterative process that we're seeking to take, that we need to take over the life course of the strategy in order to be able to keep progress happening and working towards those goals of improving inclusion. But in terms of the things that are underway now, it's probably important to note that there is already some pretty significant support available for whānau if they need it, particularly through the welfare system. And, that support is, there's obviously some conditions that whānau will need to meet in order to be able to access that financial support, but it is there. And that support is also is available to cover the cost of internet and devices. Other initiatives include things like some particular programs focused in education, supporting around 36,000 learners to learn both inside and outside of the schooling environment. And also here in DIA, we're running a digital skills program for individuals in whānau that supports around 16,000 people to upskill in the core and essential digital skills, accessing collateral through our partners, Manaia Kalani Education Trust, and their partners, including Te Wānanga Aotearoa. The government's also continuing its investment in ensuring that that good quality, high-speed internet is available in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and current focus on rolling that internet infrastructure out to rural and remote communities towards, I think by the end of 2023, around 84,000 new households who currently don't have any internet connection actually being able to access that high speed, high quality and reliable internet. Some policy aid or some agencies are also focusing on digital inclusion in their own particular contexts. For example, through the health reforms, they're giving a lot of thought actually to how they can continue to support New Zealanders to be able to access health services, both digitally and non-digitally. Similarly, some of the larger operational agencies like Inland Revenue, MSD, ACC have all got digital inclusion programs as part of their own particular corporate strategies. So there is a lot happening at the moment inside of the government. Probably worthwhile, as Kim mentioned, to recognise the activities that are also happening outside of government, particularly the thought that that industry is giving to its own equity offerings, and we're in kind of ongoing dialogue with those major providers around the things that government can do to help the market to make its contribution to these problems, these really gnarly problems as well. So we don't have a full answer today, but we do have we think, reasonable start and an iterative approach.
Great. I'm just wary of time and I'd like us to get on to the questions from our audience here today. So thank you for that. I think a lot of the questions I had swirling around in my head and to follow on from this are coming up in the audience Q&A part. So I think maybe it's probably a good point to switch to that stage of the session. Kim, do you want to lead off the first question?
Will do. And we're going to, in fairness, we're going to do them in order, the ones that have come in, and we'll probably theme some up that are similar as well. So Adrienne and Colin, there's a few questions coming in about particular things in the strategy, how are they dealt with? And one of them is accessibility. As you know, really important for both your inclusion and your trust pillars of the strategy. And of course, accessibility is something that DIA and the GCDO have responsibility for. Can you sort of tell us, how does this strategy speak to accessibility and what actions we might see?
Well, again, if I maybe start and then Adrienne can kind of add some comments as well. So look, the first thing that that we did is when we were developing the strategy, we tried to make the process as accessible as we could. We did have some challenges because we were consulting on the strategy during the middle of lockdowns. So we did have some challenges with that, but the online sessions that we ran did have accessible elements to it, and we did run a specific engagement session for the disabled community. So we tried to do as much as we could there. And then in publishing the strategy, we've also made it available in as many forms as we possibly could. So if you take a look at the digital strategy page on digital.gov.nz, you'll see that it's available in multiple formats, and we're quite proud of the work that we've done there. So do go and take a look. My favourite is the easy read version, which I think the team that took what is a relatively complex document and simplified it down to an easy read version just did an awesome job, and it's much my favourite version of the strategy. So do go take a look at that. More broadly though, accessibility is a key part of inclusion, isn't it? So I think as we continue to think about how we implement the strategy, accessibility will be a really key part of it. And Kim, you mentioned that DIA has a big role to play there with things like the Web Accessibility Standard that we have developed within DIA, and that is mandated across all government websites. Now, one of the things we know about that standard is that it's not as well adhered to as we would like it to be. And so we're going to put a little bit of energy behind that over the next while to try and lift the bar in terms of the way government agencies design their websites and design their services to make them more accessible to all communities. I'm conscious of time and I don't want to take too much on each question, but Adrienne, do you have anything to add on that one?
No, not really, Colin. I guess just one other point that I would make, if I may, and I think it's important just recognising the recent parliamentary debate that our Citizens Advice Bureau colleagues drove in terms of the observation that they were making. I don't want to put words in their mouth around their characterisation of the issue that they're seeing, but a real need for the public service and actually private sector organisations to recognise that services need to be accessible for both able-bodied people and also disabled people. So we're working with the new Ministry for Disability Issues to sort of understand what the opportunities are, I suppose, in that space, and sitting alongside that, ensuring that accessibility, not just online accessibility, but actually accessibility generally, is an important part of our strategy for a digital public service and the action plan that sits underneath that. And I know that, for example, in the early development of the refresh that's underway on the action plan, there has been some active kōrero with non-government organisations to input their perspectives into some of both the issues, but also the actions that need to be taken.
So I've got a couple of questions here. I'm just trying to guide through them, see if there's any sort of common ones there, but I've got to try a really nice, simple one for you guys. Where, with some of the projects that are initiatives that are already underway, is there somewhere they can go to get a more detailed plan, like the rural connectivity, $60 million investment? Is there somewhere they can get a better, more information, I guess?
Yes. So look, as I mentioned in my presentation, the initiatives that are underway are being led by a whole variety of different government agencies. So this is not a DIA strategy, it's a government strategy, and it will be contributed to by a whole range of government agencies. So that $60 million investment in connectivity is being overseen by the Ministry for Business, Innovation and Employment, and they will have information on their website about that. But I think it's a really good point, Chris, and we probably need to bring together some way of reporting to the community on how all of these initiatives are going to be progressed over time in a way that is consolidated rather than just kind of spread around the public service. So one opportunity to do that, I think, will be through the work that the Digital Executive Board that's been established to oversee implementation of the strategy. We will be reporting to them on progress, and perhaps those reports could be made available. So we'll take that away and have a wee think about how we might be able to do that.
Thanks, Colin. I guess I haven't heard too much about it, the Digital Executive Board, so maybe some other people haven't. But it could lead into this other question. Is there a formal governance role for non-government stakeholders within that?
Adrienne, you could maybe talk a little bit about the forum that you established as we worked on the digital inclusion plan. And then I can maybe talk a little bit about some ideas for the future.
Yeah, really happy to. So as Kim mentioned, we'd been doing some work earlier on this year, really just to more deeply analyse where those issues, the problems, and also the extent of exclusion nationally. That came together into some advice that we put to the Minister a couple of months back. We had the real privilege of having that advice shepherded by a group of non-government representatives. For example, DECA was represented on that group. The Telecommunications Forum had some input from industry, as well as the Citizens Advice Bureau, I think, from the top of my memory. There was one other, Iwi and Māori, a representative from the Iwi Chairs Forum. And that was a really powerful group, actually, in terms of being able to input the various perspectives that they have, both in terms of issues and solution options, but also a sense check around what actually was being considered and whether or not it would have the intended impact. So, you know, I'm a massive advocate of having a forum or a group like that, shepherding not just the digital inclusion pillar, but also the wider strategy and its action plan. It's my understanding that there is that a forum like that has been proposed, Colin, the multi-stakeholder forum.
Yeah, so maybe I can talk a little bit about that. So look, we have a strategy, and it's our intention that the strategy will endure over time, but we know that we need to regularly refresh the actions under the strategy so that we make the progress that we need to. So the idea that we're sort of toying with at the moment is bringing together on an annual or perhaps once every couple of years what we're calling a multi-stakeholder forum, which would be a really broad group of people from across society that have an interest in New Zealand's digital transformation, and use that forum as a way of taking stock of where we are at the moment, what we've achieved over the previous period, and helping government think about what are the targets and programs that we need to put in place to continue the progress that we're making. So that is still kind of in the melting pot. It's still to be designed, but that's certainly our intention, that the engagement approach that we took to developing the strategy will continue through the strategy's implementation.
Thanks, Colin.
Thanks, Adrienne.
We're running out of time now, so we're going to power through a few more questions. Now, one of the questions is about existing support that's available through MSD. And if any of us have known how to go at this, it's really hard to get digital equity things to fit into MSD boxes. And our question is there a handy one-pager available anywhere that explains this? And I think the answer is no, there is not. But good friends at DIA, could you talk to your friends at MSD to ask them to produce such a one-pager? Because in the interim, while we're waiting for better solutions, could we at least let people know what they can get through the MSD system? Could you pass that message on to MSD for us?
Adrienne, you've been working closely with MSD, so I'll let you answer that one.
The short answer is absolutely, Kim. As part of the work that we've done, we actually did a reasonable stock take of supports that are available both from the government, but also from the market. And I do wonder about the ability to be able to share that with the DECA community, just so that you can, sort of see it. That'll just caveat that it's a current state view and stuff changes on the daily. But it is an insight that we have now about what can be accessed today, which we'd be happy to share.
Yeah, I think the other probably point to make there is that we are in an active conversation with MSD about what their future support might look like as well, because although there is some support available for digital inclusion at the moment, it tends to be fairly one-off and narrow. And so, as they think about the future of the welfare system, we want them to be thinking about how digital equity fits within the wider welfare system that they oversee. So that's a policy conversation that will continue to happen.
That would be awesome. Thank you. We'll write that down as an action. I'll do one more question while I've got the mic. One of the things that folks I think are really pleased to see in the strategy is around incorporating Te Ao Māori views around data. And that's a goal, awesome goal. But what folks are wondering is, what does this specifically sort of look like in practice? And this might be something for Stats NZ more than DIA, but is there something you can tell us about that?
This is your great passion at the moment, Adrienne, so I'm sure you'd love to answer this one.
Thanks for the question, Kim. And it is an area of active collaboration, I suppose, between ngā iwi Māori and Te Kawanatanga, the Crown. The reason why Colin's mentioned that I'm doing my role is because I'm in another program. I'm doing some work in this space, particularly around cloud adoption. So we have, over the last few years, worked really hard to build a strong and trusted relationship with iwi and Māori. And that relationship is really critical foundation in order to be able to actually progress mahi in a trusted way. And so for us in DIA, that's taken us a couple of years, but we got there, didn't we, Colin, in terms of establishing a minority agreement between the department and the Data Iwi Leaders Group, who've got authority to speak on behalf of the national iwi chairs in respect of digital and data kaupapa. That work program includes a series of kaupapa that our tiriti partners have expressed strong interest in, including, the words that are used are Māori data sovereignty, but it is about tino rangatiratanga. It is about the ability to be able to exercise their rights and interests and their data, but also at the same time, it's about being able to harness the value of that data for their own benefit. And so what we're doing at the moment is really just understanding each other's worldviews around the topic. Our treaty partners have very recently published a report onto the Te Kahuraranga website, which is publicly available, which expresses Te Ao Māori view on particularly the use of cloud and including the use of cloud for Māori data. And we're in active dialogue about the kaupapa of how we might go about sharing of power and decision making. So expect to see some publication around that from our tiriti partners from Te Ao Māori sometime soon. I'm not going to time box it because it's their report to provide in terms of the Te Ao Māori view. And what that will then lead to is some work, I suppose, on the government side in terms of how it might be, of the implications and how it might be practically applied. So it's an ongoing corridor. And something that I think is going to be a focus for us to work through together over the coming months and years.
Thanks very much for answering that one for us, Adrienne. Chris, over to you for the next question.
Yeah, well, which one do I pick? I mean, there's so many great ones there. I think one of the things I've picked up and a few of the questions coming through is I see a few members from our libraries and council groups, and even now already in place digital inclusion initiative groups. I guess one of the things we're trying to get through this is how is what you're doing incorporating those already doing work on the ground? You know, we've heard about a few of the other things that are there. What voice or what way can we enhance their voice and make sure that the people who are working at the coalface is echoing up and coming up the chain?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So the digital strategy is primarily about aligning the work that we do within government, because that was really the gap that the minister saw, where when he first took the portfolio on, he got a number of briefings from different government agencies all about similar topics. And although, you know, he said they were good briefings, they weren't very well connected or aligned. And so his objective initially with the digital strategy was just to bring the government activity around digital together. But I think now that we've got that strategy, the next step will be, how do we connect the work that we do in government with the work that's happening in communities? And so I think that will be an ongoing issue that we'd like to continue to work on. I noticed too a number of questions in the chat about libraries and the role that libraries play. Of course, DIA is the home to the National Library, and so, you know, we have a ready-made group of interested people here within the department that would be very keen to partner with us on digital inclusion matters, and they have a leadership role right out across the whole of the library system. So, Adrienne, I don't know whether you've got anything to add.
I just invite further kōrero, actually, Chris, with the community. We are very, very keen to, you know, develop a really solid view of what is available and what we can do, I suppose, centrally here in the government to input that into both the thinking, but also as the work program evolves, the policy, the design of those activities. So we had come rolling back to that very first question that was asked. Perhaps that's another area that that the DECA whānau you know, can support the kaupapa around is you know, the community-led piece that we were sort of talking about before, but where there are some wonderful initiatives to either, you know, sort of surface or learn from, surfacing those up through an ongoing kōrero as well.
Kia ora, Adrienne and Colin. Well, thank you, guys. There are plenty of questions on this list, but I think there is a really great opportunity for DECA and Vic and myself to work through some of these questions, bring them all together. I think maybe there's the opportunity there for us to try to answer a few more than we were able to get through today. Yeah. So I appreciate those who spent some time typing in your questions and it may not have been answered.
Yeah, well, Chris, just exactly on that, I was going to say I've been looking through the questions and there are some really neat questions in there that I think we would like the opportunity to answer. So if we can capture those from the chat, and perhaps if you can flip them through to Adrienne and myself, we would, you know, have a go at answering them, and perhaps they could be posted alongside the webinar kind of on your website or something, you know, find a way of communicating back to people so that you do get an answer to the question they've asked.
Oh, that'll be great. I know that there'll be some requests for those questions. So, and that's a good starting point for us. The question that you pose to us is how we can best help you with your work. And I think this could be the starting point for that too. Just like to thank those who've joined us here today. And please, if you've got any further questions or follow-up, that you can go to digitalequity.nz and contact us through email and via our website. And yeah, I'll just like to thank Colin and Adrienne for their time today, and Kim for co-hosting with me today and keeping me on track, sending me nice little messages to get moving and things like that. So I'll just pass it over to you, Adrienne and Colin, to say a little word, and then I'll close us out.
Oh, kia ora, Chris, kia ora, Kim. And look, thank you everyone that's online today. It's, as you can probably tell, it's an area that Adrienne and I have some passion for. We've been working hard over the last 2 or 3 years to understand better the problem and the challenges that communities across New Zealand are facing in terms of barriers to digital inclusion. we've managed to get this onto the agenda of government now, and we're going to push hard to do whatever we can to begin finding solutions to the problems we know are out there. So we're keen to continue working with you and all parts of the community as we begin to design solutions.
Well, e te whānau DECA, ko tēnei te mihi atu kia koutou katoa, ki tō kōrero tēnei rā. Thank you very much for today's conversation. It's been a privilege to spend a bit of time with you to talk about this area of shared passion that Colin, I completely tautoko what he said. It's a passion area for me, this kaupapa. Government can't be the only player in this game, isn't the only way of being able to address this very gnarly problem for, whānui Aotearoa. So look forward to further dialogue, further interaction with the DECA community as we work our way through the next period of time in this space. Kia ora.
Got it, Adrienne. That's a great point to finish on, how we can best work together as all parts and can't be solely at government's door. Thank you again. I'll just close us out and I hope everyone has a great day. Unuia ki te uru tapu nui, kia wātia, kia māma, te nāku, te tina, te wairu e tā tangata. Ko oi rā I runga whakairia aki ki runga, kia tina, hume, huie, tā ki e. Kia ora everyone, travel well today.